Hey,
Hello, everyone. I am Sage Stevens, the host of Shout Out with Sage. And today on the show, I'm sitting down with an Oscar and Academy Award nominated writer behind some of the most iconic stories in animation and beyond. From The Princess and the Frog to Treasure Planet, and now Captain America Brave New World, his work spans generations, genres, and mediums. He wrote and directed the award-winning short film The Park Bench, while his graphic novel Defiant, based on the true life story of Robert Smalls, is currently underway to becoming a motion picture and can be found on Amazon. Today, we're talking about what it really takes to tell a compelling story, how it begins, how it evolves, and how it lasts. I want to welcome to the show today writer, director, producer, and dad, Rob Edwards. Hey,
thank
Rob,
you for
how are
having me.
you?
Hey, great. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
Excellent.
Okay, so where should we start? I don't even know. You've done so much stuff. How did you become a writer?
Oh wow. Well, when I was a kid, I wasn't the class clown or anything. I was the kid in the back of the room who made fun of the class clown, and I think I just really enjoyed like that kind of like commenting on what was going on and passing notes, and then those notes got longer, then they became kind of sketches and plays, and yeah, and then I've always loved movies, and at a certain point, it was kind of like I think I want to be part of that world. So I broke my father's heart. He wanted me to be a doctor like him, and came to Hollywood and started writing jokes.
Was anyone else in your family like creative?
My little brother is actually very creative. My little brother
Mhm.
has an ad agency. He has done amazing ads all the way through history. Jeffrey Edwards, GEOFF, and he's creative. I'm creative. My older brother is a rocket scientist, so not so much. But he went the way of my parents into the science world, and then Jeff and I.
You've built a career across television, animation, and film. What was the first moment you realized storytelling wasn't just something that, was a hobby, but that you loved it and something you could build a life around?
Wow. Um, I think my intention always was to at least make a living in the entertainment world. That my dad basically said when I told him that I wanted to, study movies at Syracuse and then go out to Hollywood and do that. He basically made me a challenge. He said, "You've got 9 months to do that. 9 months to make a living in the entertainment world, and if you don't, I'm going to suck you into the school. You're going to go to Howard University med school. You're going to get your intern in the hospital where I am chief of staff, and we're going to go into practice together." So that was always kind of this weird sort of Damocles over my head all the way
Right, you
through.
had this threat,
And
yeah.
yes, this threat. So I immediately started thinking, of making a living in Hollywood. So I just wrote as many letters as I could. I sent letters to everybody whose movies I liked. So everybody who I kind of wanted to be, all these writers and directors and producers, and I got a couple letters back. And I would always ask everybody the same question. If you were 19, what advice would you give to your 19-year-old?
Right.
And everybody said, get out to Hollywood as quick as you can, read as many screenplays as you can, write as many screenplays as you can, and read as many biographies as you can. And through biographies, I kind of learned how other people had shaped their careers, what kind of things they'd done, and I just kind of followed in those footsteps, and it kind of worked out.
Would that be the same advice you would give someone looking to be a writer now or to come out to LA?
Absolutely. I do think that studying biography, seeing what other people have done, is essential. It's so. I think so many kids go. I teach at USC and also at Syracuse and stuff at NYU and stuff, and the kids, they're all passionate about what they're doing, but they don't really have a sense of how they're going to shape a career.
Mm.
And and it's tougher now than it was when I started, because there's so many of these kids. They're all so, wonderfully talented, that they're all competing against a bigger pool of people. And if you're going to do that, you really have to be strategic about how you're going to do it. And if you're not, then somebody who is going to take your job. And so that's the one thing that I would add, is just be more strategic. Everything that I did, you have to do that times 10.
What else would a person, starting out in the industry really need to know? What other tip would you have?
I would say that it's tougher than you think. That that a lot of kids, even my own, that when you're a kid and you just play soccer, you get a trophy. You play basketball, you get a trophy. If you want to do something, your parents kind of arrange the world so that you can do it. That you get really good coaching and you get whatever it is.
The tools, yeah.
Yeah, all the tools, and then somebody is supporting you all the way through. And in my case, like, not only was my dad very much against it, my mom was kind of neutral. I think I cleared the way for my little brother, but
Right.
in my family, there was no real support. And in Detroit, where I'm from, the only city north of Canada, so we'll talk about that. But there just weren't a lot of teachers or anything like that who had been out to Hollywood, or who understood the way the town works. So I had to kind of build everything from scratch, and a little bit of that is true for kids now anyway, where the terrain today is different than it was, and
Yes.
different. The town is day by day shrinking. Fewer and fewer things are getting made by fewer and fewer people. So it's a different world. And also, you're graduating. There's a bunch of, 32,000 kids graduate with like some form of entertainment degree every year. And you're still competing with guys like me, for those jobs. We're not going anywhere. So whoever graduated last year and the year before and the year before, and then all the old guys like me are still in there. So the town is really, really, really tough.
What did those early years teach you? Like, what did you hone when you were like struggling?
Yeah, I think it was. Well, I had to. Well, one thing, coming out of Syracuse, I thought I thought I knew it all. I was a good student, and I had gotten, I'd done some really good, some fun things. And I got out here, and everybody I was showing scripts to and everything, they said, no, that's not it. So I had to kind of start all over from scratch and just relearn how actual TV shows work, how movies work, and all of that. And that I wish I was a little bit more ready for. I thought I was complete coming out of college, and so really flushing everything I knew, not holding on to any old ideas, taking on new ideas very quickly. If I had been there in my corner, I would have said, look, whatever you learned yesterday, do not, don't cling to that. Just
Okay.
go with what they're telling you, and look at movies. Just study as many movies as you can. Going back to those 4 bits of advice. Watch as many movies as you can, analyze them, memorize them. I'll tell you a story. When I was getting my first job at Disney, on Treasure Planet, right? I go in, they send me the script for Treasure Planet at 6 p.m. So I can't go to Kinko's, I can't copy it and whatever. It's on red paper, and so even if I could, I couldn't copy it. And so I had to read the script. I read it, and I go, oh my God, they're making a sci-fi version of Treasure Island. This is going to be fantastic. Right. I need the book. I need there's the 1953, I think, version of Treasure Island that Disney made in black and white.
Yeah, the movie. Yeah.
There's Captain Courageous, which I thought was a lot like it, if I was going to make one, I would make it a lot like Captain Courageous, and then Muppet Treasure Island, which I remember watching and thinking like, wow, they really just distilled this whole book into a really good form. So I stayed up all night. I watched all that stuff. I went in the next day. I gave a TED talk on what they had done, what they should have
Right.
done, what I would do. The whole thing, just soup to nuts. And I actually, we were getting into Q&A, and I answered my last question, and I just got up and left. And he said, "Hey, where are you going?" I said, "I think I nailed this meeting. I'm just going to go home and wait for you guys to call me." And they're like, "Oh, funny." So they said, "Yeah, you nailed the meeting. We're going to call you later." Of course, I get the job, and the first day we start talking about movies, and I think we talked about 6 movies on the first meeting, first day. And I kind of knew them, but I didn't know them as well as I'd known the movies in the meeting.
Mhm.
And when I got back to my office, there was a stack of DVDs, and they said, "Yeah, the guys want you to watch all this stuff, and get up to speed, memorize them, take your notes."
Right.
So the crazy magic trick that I did to get the job was the job. That's every day at Marvel and Disney. Those guys are it's film school on steroids. And so that's one thing that I would leave students with, is continue to study movies. What is it? Tom Cruise watches a movie every day.
Right.
You don't have to do that, but you can get close.
Right. What were the movies that they wanted you to watch for Treasure Planet?
Ooh, Officer and a Gentleman was a big one. And a lot of movies that kind of not necessarily, Captain's Courageous that I had mentioned. There was also of Ron Clements, and we did talk a lot about the 1953 movie, and we talked about just kind of movies about kind of coming of age films, boy kind of movies, like what had they done in those movies, and they all have a shape to them. And so what were those mentor mentee movies like, even father son movies, stuff like that. And just really getting into what makes them work, and then some of them that don't work, what makes them not work.
When you're working on a project that comes from a novel, or you're adapting it, how much do you use the original material, and then do you find you just sort of have to get out of your own way and just follow your imagination, I guess?
Yeah, equal parts of both. That that a lot of times, what is it? Ruth Prowler Jabravla, who wrote all these wonderful merchandising movies, back in the day. She said she reads the book, she would read the book and make notes in the margins, and then she would throw the book away and write. And then after that, she would reread the book and make sure she hadn't missed anything big. And I like that as a way of doing stuff. So that was basically my approach on Treasure Planet, was let's get the spirit of the book, but let's tell a modern story. And Princess and the Frog, a little tougher because it's a thinner story, just Kiss the Frog. And but something like King of Kings, which is the story of Jesus, and that has
You have a lot of material.
There's a lot there, and you want to honor that. You want to be able to tell all of that story. On top of it, you have the Charles Dickens of it all, which is his distillation of what that was. And then, of course, the director and myself of, he found certain gospels very important in certain stories, and I myself found different things, and we had different interpretations of supper and all that stuff, and just going at it that way. But that's one of those things where you completely have to nerd out, and then you move on. I'll say too that something like Princess and the Frog. I know more about green tree frogs than I'm supposed to, because you just do a lot of, everybody there nerds out. And
Right.
Show stuff about the bayou.
When it comes to those projects, how much research do you do?
A lot, a lot. And I'll add to that. Captain America: Brave New World. The guys at Marvel, they have, for all I can see, they have memorized every single comic book ever written. Uh, I would offhandedly, mention a line from a comic book, and everybody on the call would say, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's issue so and so from blah 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 and whatever, page
Right.
17. Yeah, I love that too." And then he does this and this and this, and they would just go through it. It was amazing. They have this portal where they allow you to read all of the comic books, and every night when we would talk, there would be a long list of comic books that I had to read. 50, 70 comic books, every couple of days. So that was a lot. That's a lot of research. And of course, like I said, King of Kings, a lot of research. Treasure Planet was kind of Boston Dynamics science research, and then pirate movies and all that, and then of course with Princess and the Frog, classic romantic comedies and modern romantic comedies.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll talk about those.
You started in television on iconic shows like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. How did that environment shape your instincts as a writer and prepare you for, where you ended up in film?
Yeah, well, it's first, Fresh Prince was a ball to work on. It was just
Yeah,
so
I
much
would
fun.
imagine.
Everybody
I'm like, oh my God, that's
everybody
so
there was so
exciting.
smart and so funny, and man, we just had a ball. And the cast was wonderful, so we could get Alfonso Ribeiro and James Ivory were just, you can't find better writers to work to write for. And so the uh, we would get into it, and we would write the show. And of course you're writing every show every day, so you're doing 22 shows, 26 shows I think in the first season. You are writing the show that's on the floor, you're writing the next show,
Mm.
the show before that, and then you're outlining the show before that. So, and each time you're just churning through. You're winding up working on weekends. I was the guy. A lot of times, I was the person. If a script wasn't working, script had come in from an outside writer or something, they would hand it to me and say, "Hey, Rob, true this to the show." And then on show night, I did the warm up. I was in the audience,
Okay,
talking to
yes, I've
everybody.
been to the shows. I know they have the
It was
warm-up
great. We
comedian
had
type
DJ
guy.
Paul.
Yeah.
We had this. It was a party.
Yeah.
But also between takes, sometimes a joke doesn't work, in front of the audience on take one, and we would have to rewrite, those jokes that didn't work. So Andy Borowitz and I would just kind of huddle up and say, okay, how about this? How about this? How about this? And then we would go down to the stage and give the actors the new lines. And if those didn't work, we'd have more jokes, and off we go. Fun thing there was that we every so often we would tell Will his lines, but we wouldn't tell him Carlton's lines. We wouldn't tell him Alfonso's lines, and we'd tell Alfonso his lines, but not Will's lines. And
Right.
and then we say, well, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? Well, you'll find out. And then we'd roll it so that they would have these spontaneous reactions to
Right.
everything. So they'd hear the line, and they go, "Ooh, this is going to be delicious." He'd get him back, and then you'd see Will light up, and bam, he'd give it back to Carlton. It was really fun.
Yeah, they would land some zingers and just
Yeah,
feed off of
but
each
a lot
other.
of work. Once again, a lot of work, but joyful work. I mean, stuff. I always say, like embrace the suck. You know that you are going to be up at three o'clock in the morning, and you're going to have to be back at 9 a.m.
Mm.
To on the set when the cast reads the next, the version that you worked all night on, and you have to
Right.
kind of defend and say, okay, well, look, I'll take the notes back to the room, and then when the rest of the writers show up, you go back and you say, okay, well, there's problems with this, and this. I have a couple of ideas, but we should probably table these things and have these ready for the next go around, and you do that all week until you shoot on Friday.
Oh, wow. Was there a
Yeah.
specific break or was it a series of small wins that got you from TV into feature? into feature films?
Wow, man, great question. I think a combination of both.
Mhm.
I had always promised myself that, going back to the biographies, I had thought, do stand up comedy, do variety, sitcoms, start writing movies, and then eventually write and direct movies. And give yourself a certain amount of time for each. And I think I'd given myself like a very short time to do stand up, because stand up is the most horrific thing that you ever want to do in your life. Short of jumping out of a plane, stand up is up there with heart attack time.
Yeah, I've
Um,
done some stand up. Yeah, it's very rough. It's
it's rough.
not for the
Um,
meek.
yeah, no, not at all. And even on good days, it's you're gonna find out things about yourself. Variety was fun, in Living Color and stuff like that. I jumped right over Variety and started writing sitcoms, but I give myself like 10 years to write sitcoms, and then I was going to move into movies. And that 10 years kind of came and went, and I was really enjoying myself in sitcoms. And then I said, no, I promised myself that I was going to make this move into movies. So I'm going to
Mm.
go and do it. And fortunately, my agent Irv Schachter was really nice and said, "Look, I'm going to help you make this transition. So how much time can you take off? And you can pitch me some ideas, and then let's go." And fortunately, the first script. So that was that was rough because, well, I started off, I kind of knew what movies were, but I didn't really, I could write a
Mm.
TV show like overnight. I was that guy, but movies were rough. So I wrote my first movie, and it was 40 pages long, because that's basically what a sitcom is. And then I wrote it again. It was 50 pages long. And I said, okay, I have to start all over and learn how
Learn
movies
the
work. And
techniques, right?
yeah, and I kind of learned, just structure and all that. And so after a while, I got to that point where I really really understood it. I wrote a script, and so that was the hard part. The good part was there was a bidding war that two producers who used to work together, who no longer work together, both liked the script that I'd written, and they got into a bidding war. And so in an afternoon, I think that it went on at 10, and then by 12 I was set in
Oh,
the movie
wow.
world. I was on the cover of Variety and the Hollywood Reporter as like one of the biggest spec sales of the year. And yeah, the rest of it was just fun. Movie never got made. That's a terrible thing, but but it kind of put me in this position of
Right.
uh,
Well, you made the transition. So
yes.
from TV to having that accomplishment of the movie being optioned or sold, how long of a time frame was that?
About a year. It took about a
Okay.
year. I had planned to take a year off, and just and just give myself that time.
Mm.
And so part of the year was just me crashing, just relaxing after years of working, all night and all day.
Yeah,
And
crazy hours. Yes.
yeah, and then trying to figure out what I wanted to write, what my voice was going to be as a movie writer, as opposed to what I
Mm.
was doing. And then also studying like what was selling, what was the market that I was walking
Mm.
into. And um and
Is
then
that
after,
important? Sorry, with the
very much,
knowing,
it is to me.
like,
I think.
so if someone's looking to, like, right now, let's say someone wants to write something, they should be looking at what's pop. How do you find out like what's selling, or how do you know what the market wants right now?
Right. Well, I think it's less about what the market wants right now, as opposed to
Mm.
what it's not doing now that it should be doing.
Okay.
So you go to a movie, and my thing is, I'll watch the previews almost more than the movie. I want to see what's about to happen later in the year,
Mm.
and then kind of say, wow, that looks like a great movie. They're probably going to make more of those, and and then just finding movies that are, for me, that do well, but that are also very good. And so that's IMDb and Box Office Mojo, or whatever, Rotten Tomatoes and Box Office Mojo,
Mm.
and just kind of seeing, can I write that? What do I, there's a thing at Disney Pixar, which is be a film goer first, be a filmmaker second.
Mm.
So put yourself in the chair. Give yourself, for me, it's popcorn with M and M's, half Diet Coke and half Diet lemonade, and just sit there, and then the lights go out, and the curtain opens up. What do I most want to see? And then what do I want to see next? What are my favorite opening sequences? What are my favorite characters? What things do I want to explore with myself? What do I want to? I like father and son movies.
Mm.
I like movies with some kind of epic proportion. I like things about. I like big challenges. Princess the Frog
Mm.
and Captain America. Um, what do I want to? What do I really really want to see up on screen? And then I try to make that happen. And hopefully, there's one or two other people in the world who wants to see the movies that I want to see. But I try not to do. There is a trap, and you're right to ask me the question, because there is a trap of like trying to do the thing that everybody else is doing,
Mm.
because everybody's going to be over there. You don't want to be over there with everybody. You want to be over, in your own little area where, like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that movie. Yeah, right, that's a great one. Let's do that, and then boom, off you go.
When you're creating something from scratch, where do you begin? Character, theme, or world?
Mm. That's an interesting one. It's for me, it's almost the three are the same.
Okay.
That story is character and character is story. Right.
Mm.
So if you have a character, uh, you should have a sense of what that character is going to go through. What is that character's worst possible nightmare? Right? And then you're going to write towards that. Um,
Okay.
and whatever that is, whatever the end of that is going to be your theme. That person is going to choose one thing over another. And whatever that is, structurally for me, that's the theme. Your hero values and your underdog values. And you're trying to pursue something. And in the end, you decide, the thing that I wanted is not the thing I needed. And that's my shift. So like Tiana wants to have a restaurant. She has her
Right.
work life balance is off kilter. She really 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 wants to work, and she's said no to love and said no to all those aspects of life, and in the end she flips that and she makes the choice to destroy the amulet and choose love over her restaurant when she has that chance, and in the end she gets it all. But that's what that movie is. So that character has to you start that character. It's somebody who is hardcore work life. She's all work no
Right.
play. And so who's she going to meet? She's going to meet somebody who's all play no work. And what's she going to do? She's going to go on this thing that tells her that being all work no play is not all that fun. So she's going to meet a
Right.
crazy firefly who believes in love, 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 doesn't even think about work. And she's going to meet crazy alligator who thinks that he is going to pursue his dreams no matter what, and that's going to be the play. So the everything starts to build itself almost like DNA. It just a single cell thing of, I want to tell a story about this,
Mm.
and I think this is the best character for it. I think this is the ending for it, and then everything else grows from there.
When you're working with, a big studio or a franchise, how much leeway do you have to sort of, you know, follow your own path? How do you take notes? How does all that work?
Yeah, I used to think you had none. Especially at Disney, everybody would talk about Disney being a factory,
Mm.
and you're just going to get grinded through it. And But John Lasseter, who was running the studio at the time, said, "Where are you in this?" He would always ask, "Where are you in this? What makes you cry about this particular subject? Where's your heart here?" And we explored those same kind of things with Treasure Planet. Like, what really is the essence here? What is it about? And you can't really farm that out. You can't just say, "Well, it's a story about this." You really have to dig inside of yourself and tell your own personal story. And if you can do it right, then you get invited back. You get to do more of those kinds of movies. And then the question is not, well, we want you to do this. It's where do you want to take this? And then after you have that, then it's like, okay, good. Yes, give us gems and wonderful scenes and some comedy and laughs and tears and all the fun stuff.
Right. What can animation do emotionally that live action can't, and vice versa?
Animation. What I love about or one of the zillion things that I love about animation. I'm an animation kid, so I really, growing up, I was the kid with the Mickey ears and the little Art of Animation book, and I had a comic strip in high school, so I can.
Oh,
I
that's cool. Yeah.
And or as John Musker, who was one of the directors of Treasure Planet and Princess and the Frog, he said, "You're not the worst artist on the movie," which was
Wow.
a huge compliment, because there were these
Yeah,
guys
exactly.
who had gone through the years of college, and they drew all day and everything, and
Right.
I was not the worst, so that's yay. And for me, there's a magic to it. There is, you go in and you're watching drawings, and in about 7 seconds you forget that you're watching drawings, and you get drawn into stories, and anything can happen in them, and you're watching this girl turn into a frog, and then you're just kind of living her life in the bayou as a frog, and in the end it's almost shocking when they kiss and they turn back into human beings, and you're like, "Oh yeah, that's right, they were they were humans all this time. Oh wow, would they have fallen in love if they had stayed human?" And you can explore really cool stuff, and that's the magic of a good animated movie. It takes you someplace, and then you relax into it because you're seeing this wonderful fairy tale.
Did you intend to get into animation, or did that just sort of happen?
I thought all along, I thought animation would have to be a stop for me on the way to whatever. I love animation. I'll do it any day of the week. But really, I thought, from the time I was a kid, I'd made myself a promise that I would do animation. And so I always told whatever agent I was working with, I said, while you're looking around, if something comes up at Disney, I'll take that meeting. And then it just happened to happen with.
Oh, sorry, I did turn off my
no worries.
phone, but that was an emergency.
Yeah, right.
alert.
There's a kid missing.
Sorry about that.
I got to make sure I turn up my own.
Yeah,
but that was it.
It is on Do Not Disturb. Good to know. It overrides that. So.
Yeah. Oh well. But that was the thing for me, is there is a magic to that type of storytelling. There's some other stories like Defiant. We don't want to do that animated. We want people to see these actual events recreated. And there's a different kind of texture to a live action film. And of course, factoring in that, Captain America: Brave New World, which is kind of a hybrid. Most of the stuff, it's probably it is on mine, but most of the stuff is more animated than most animated films. There are live action sequences, but there are huge animated sequences within it, and in there you have to have that kind of that kind of imagination of, okay, he's flying and the other guy's flying, and there are these, fighter jets, and there's, this force, in the middle of it. There's aircraft
Mhm.
carriers. There's all kinds of things going on, and you want to make sure that you have, honored, um, that the audience is coming in. They don't want to just see people walking around on the street. They want to see something fantastic.
Right. When you is there like a big difference in when you sit down to write an animation versus a live action?
Not as much as people think. I mean, I
Mm.
think a lot of people think like, oh, it's animation, you can do whatever you want. No, you still have to tell a story. The characters still have to be compelling. It has to be about something. In fact, those things become very, very important because animation, even wonderful animation, can bore you pretty quickly. You know,
Right, right,
uh,
right.
uh, and if you haven't thought it out, if you're not, I use the term, but honoring the animation, like, you go to a world, in Princess and the Frog, right? One thing that I talked to some of the animators about was that when they get to the bayou, Naveen immediately drops down and he starts eating bugs, and he's a frog. When in Rome,
Right.
do as Rome, right? He's a world traveler. He's used to different cultures and different things, and he does that. Tiana stays standing up for most of it. Even though
Mhm.
frog can't stand up, she refuses to just drop down. She won't eat a bug. She won't do any of that stuff because she's fully a human being. And it's
Mhm.
not until like the middle of the movie when she starts to relax and the two of them start to, they dance and they,
Mhm.
and they go underwater and they do all kinds of fun stuff. It's not until then when she really accepts, her life as a frog, when she's starting to get used to Naveen and the environment and that kind of thing. And so it's a tiny, tiny little thing that you do as storyteller, but you have to have that kind of insane mind that says, well, if I'm a frog, then of course I would do this, and if I was this kind of frog, then I would do this. Um,
Mhm.
that kind of thing becomes big, hugely essential to the way that you tell stories.
It sort of sounds a little bit, I might be wrong about this, but when you're doing an animation, when you're talking to the animators, is it sort of like talking to the actors on what
Yes.
you want to see? So basically, the animator's like an actor, and you're telling them, the motivation and what you're wanting to see on screen.
Yeah. See, that was a see. Once again, I make no bones about it. I'm an animation geek. So I was when I was working on Treasure Planet. Glenn
Mhm.
Keane, which is one of the greatest animators of all time, he did Kobe's Dear Basketball.
Yeah, yeah,
The hand drawn one is
yes.
beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's very
And
good. Yeah.
he had animated Tarzan. He'd animated Belle, and I mean, he's an incredible animator, and he was doing Silver. And so I would just go to hang out with him in his office. We both speak French, so that was fun too.
Oh, bonjour,
And
comment ça va, petit
I
popo?
was, oh, yeah. Uh, okay, we have to. Okay, what are these things? I've done interviews in French, but I won't. We won't kill the
Yeah, we
audience.
won't do that
But
because
the
your French is probably much, much better than mine. So,
no, well, I also speak Quebecois, so because Detroit.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I grew
Um,
up in Canada, so yes,
yes, exactly.
yes.
This I know.
So yeah.
So I would sit there with Glenn Keane, and we would talk about all kinds of things, and he would show me the scenes that he was working on, and so and then I would go in to meet John Ripa, who was animating Jim, and they all had very, very specific things about their characters that we would talk about. I would say what my take was, and then they would tell theirs. And so I run downstairs and I grab, I think it was Paul Briggs, who was an animator, and I want you to come upstairs to and talk to the animators with me. And he said, "Oh, I'm not going up there. Whatever. Those guys are." There's a whole different thing. We're not supposed to touch it. It's like they're like fighter pilots, the animators.
Okay.
And so we go up, and I grab Glenn and John and Paul, and we're sitting there in a room, And we just start talking out the scenes. And it was very clear that Glenn had a very specific take of what he wanted Silver to be, and John had the counter take of what Jim would be doing in those scenes. And as they're talking it out, it's like, okay, well, these are actors improvising, and I would toss in story bits, and Paul would say, well, what about, what if we tried this, because this is what we need for this particular scene, and in 10 seconds we had the whole scene worked out. And so I told everybody, I said, okay, just wait, I'm going to go back to my office, I'm going to write up what I believe we just discovered. And I gave it to Paul, and Paul he storyboarded it, and then we showed it to the guys. The guys had a couple of thoughts, and then we went back, and then we showed it to the directors, and the directors were like, oh my god, this is amazing. What, are you sure the animators are going to want to do this? I said, the animators pitched this. And and it was that, I believe it was that scene in the middle of the movie when they're just kind of hanging out in the bay and talking about their dreams. And it winds up being like really, really amazing, because these guys are not just actors, but they're actors who understand like what an eyebrow going up at a certain at a certain pace, at a certain
angle,
way, and the eyes dilate at a certain point, and the nose crinkles in just a specific way during a specific line. That's how much they understand the what is it they call it, the instrument of acting. Fascinating.
Yeah, all those little nuances, all those little micro gestures that we all make that most people don't even pay attention to. Definitely.
Yeah.
With Captain America, how did that opportunity come about for you?
Well, that one was interesting, because that's another thing you can't really. When I try to tell students about it, and they're like, "Oh, that seems weird. Why would you do that?" Because they had originally called me in to, they'd read a script that I wrote, and they called me in on Black Panther.
Okay.
And they have these kind of, what do they call, bake-offs, where they'll have a bunch of writers in, and a bunch of writers will pitch their takes. They'll work with the writers on their takes as they go. And then they called me up and they said, okay, it's down to 8 writers now. And then now it's down to 4. It's like, okay, we're going to make the decision. So where are you going to be later? I was like, I'm going to be at a bar. I'm going to be trying to not think about this for a little while. Okay, right. Great. And then they called me back and they said, okay, it's down to 2. So wait a little while. We're still talking. You're doing really well. And then they said, oh, it went to somebody else. And I said, oh, who? Ryan Coogler. I'm like, oh, dude, what that's no competition. Ryan Coogler is a genius. He's the greatest storyteller of our time. So that happened. But the guys felt bad, whatever.
Okay.
There. I was brought back on Thor Ragnarok, and more or less the same thing happened. It got down to me, one other person. They went with the other person. I think Taika had a take. He wanted to basically do a lot of it himself. And then, during quarantine, they said, hey, what do you think about Cap 4? I said, I don't know. Are you doing Sam Wilson? You doing the handover? It's like, is that?
Yeah.
And they said, yeah. I said, okay, great. Well, when do I pitch? And they said, no. Kevin, wants to give this to you. Once you.
Oh, wow.
Go. And so I was like, I said, please hold. And I just ran around the house like an idiot. And I was just so thrilled. And then it was, once again, the beginning of, sleepless nights and going. Nate Moore is one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. He's just incredible, but he's a extremely hard worker. So if I turned in something at 10 p.m., I would get notes at 2 a.m. My phone would ring at 2 a.m.
Wow.
Check your email box. And then it would have all the notes and would say, okay, see you at 10 a.m. And so I would have to, okay, well, not sleep in the night.
Right.
Do my revisions, turn them in at 10, and then we would meet, and then the cycle would would go on. I'd get notes at 2 p.m. and then I'd turn it in at 10 and then 10 a.m.
When did you sleep?
Never. Weekends, kind of halfway.
Yeah.
Sleep when I'm dead is
Right,
that's
right,
always been my
exactly.
thing anyway.
How long did that writing process take?
I think I was working on that for, well, interesting, because the writing process is always another interesting one. Um, there is the outlining process,
Mm,
which for me is 2/3 of the process.
mm,
Just figuring out the story. And in this case, we're launching more or less a new franchise. It's coming out after Endgame, so that's
mm.
you know, what on earth can you make after Endgame, that isn't going to severely disappoint people? And 3-hour movie with every character you've ever seen in your
Yes,
life,
exactly.
and you just scream crying all the way through it, and yeah, and then okay, and then us, and so there was that, and so there were several different antagonists that we tried out against Cap, and just to see
Mm,
how those would work. So there was about 5 outlines, and then it came down to two, which were the Serpent Society and Red Hulk, and we wound up combining. It was going to be two movies, and we wound up making it one movie. And so um, yeah, but that was a big part of the process. And then it's like, okay, now write it, because everybody's cast, we're making whatever. And then shortly after that, there was just everything, the strike, and it
right,
was
right.
just horrendous schedule. But the uh, but for me, that amount of time, I think it was about 2 years. I think it was a year and a half, 2 years
Oh, wow.
of fun, of
That's
just
fine. It
playing in the
sounds
sand,
like
in the Marvel sandbox. I mean, living a dream.
when you're working inside a universe like that, that already has a very strong identity, how do you find your voice within that?
Mm. Um, I start with, for me personally, I start with, I'm a fan. I love the movies. I love, specifically with the Captain America movies. This was number 4 in,
Right.
of those. They all have a certain tone, and that was good. And then I read, like I say, I read everything that had Sam Wilson in it. I had memorized, and so I had a take on that. And then Sam Stern, the leader, as an antagonist, same kind of thing. You go through all of that, and then Thaddeus Ross, who turns into Red Hulk, you do all of that, and then you find, like, okay, well, who is Sam to me? What is this very personal story?
Mm,
And for me, it was always about, that as a black man in Hollywood, as a black man at Marvel or Disney or whatever, there's always this kind of secret pressure, like the don't screw it up, don't be the guy who ruins this for every other black writer who's going to come
right,
along,
right, right,
and that you do. My dad used to say you have to be twice as good to be considered half as good,
right,
and that's the thing, that no matter what Sam did, he was always going to be compared to Steve Rogers, and I always feel that when I'm writing, like, oh, I'm writing these big movies, these are all of these things are like 150 $180 million movies. There's a lot of
right.
pressure on all,
Yeah, I was
and
going to say,
I
like,
don't.
how do you handle all that pressure? Like,
I tell you, I have just I don't know. Wine. I just
wine.
you scotch. I think it's my dad. My dad, it was a doctor, and he would frequently come back from the ER, and just have these nights, and he would take a deep breath, and then he would just kind of let it all go, and then get into
Right.
the next day. And I always thought that was a superpower, that he had like this low blood pressure. Things didn't get to him. He's very
Mm.
stoic,
He could like
and
let it go. Right.
yeah, and I always thought, like, okay, I want to be like Dad. I don't want to be a doctor, but I do want to be like Dad is with that kind of pressure. because you get on these movies and somebody's going to tell you just about every day. Do you know how much this movie is costing? You know that every this movie is $1 million. Did you know that little thing that you just added, just whatever, we got to find the thing and whatever, yeah, and that's the way these things go. You are always, with a gun to your head, and that doesn't improve the creative process. I'll just say that.
No, I know, like it's as an actor or as a writer or even as an athlete, when you have the pressure, that's, some people don't do
Yeah.
very well. So
But that's why I say embrace the suck. That that's going to be the pressure. But you don't want to just make small movies.
right.
You want to challenge yourself at that level. You want to be that person who can do. If somebody says, "Oh, we're making a movie about Jesus," oh, Rob can handle this. Rob has done.
Right.
He's done First
You're
Black
the
Prince,
you're the go-to, right?
Cap America. He can handle this. He will find a good. He'll put the pressure of it aside and do something that is worthy of the budget or the commitment or the moment. Defiant is going to be a pretty big movie. We're basically encapsulating not just the Civil War, but that era, and Reconstruction and everything that was going on in the South and the country by that during that time. So there's a lot of little movies within that bigger movie.
Right.
Lincoln is assassinated. The Civil War begins and ends, and the stealing of the planter, which is an amazing event in history. And so yeah, you want to be able to say, okay, there is a lot of pressure on me. Put that aside. What am I doing? What is this about? How do I relate to it personally? What's the best character to take through this journey? What obstacles can I put in front of this person who's going to make it really kind of fun? And then, post-it notes like, oh, this would be a fun scene. This would be a really fun scene. Be a film goer first, right? So it's like, oh, if I was seeing this movie, I would want to see these things. Put those things in the movie, make them really, really fun to watch, and then ultimately tell a story that's going to make people cry.
Defiant is a graphic novel that you're turning into a movie, and it's based on the real life of Robert Smalls. How did you end up wanting to do this?
Yeah, that came to me. There are these wonderful things that just kind of jump in the boat, when the fish jump in the boat for me. And so, and this was one of them. I get a call from a friend of mine, a high school friend, this guy, Dave Baxter, who works at a company called Legion M. And he calls me and says, like, hey, we got this project. Somebody sent in a meme that said, there are all these other movies made about all these other people. Nobody's made a movie about this guy. So why doesn't somebody make a movie about this guy? And he's telling me about Robert Smalls, and I start, in the other window, I'm kind of Googling as he's talking.
Doing research, right.
Yeah, and I said, holy cow, who is?
Yeah, I looked him up. He's very
at his base.
interesting.
He's 23 years old. What he's known for is when he's 23 years old, he's a slave working on a ship that is ferrying munitions for the Confederacy. One night when the white crew takes off, 3 white crew members take off just to go frolic on the shore. The black crew takes the boat, gets past 5 military checkpoints, dressed as the captain. They line the boat with gunpowder, expecting to blow it up in case they got caught. They don't want to be tortured and dragged through the streets.
Right.
They surrender the ship to the Union Army, and immediately the amount of weapons and the boat itself makes them all pretty rich. So they're free and rich.
Right.
They, he starts a railroad. He starts a printing press. He runs for Congress 5 times.
Wow.
And remarkably, I think, dies of old age. So here's a superhero. And the most amazing thing about it is that we don't know the story. And so he said, well, hey, do you want to tell the story? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Or, he said, do you want to help out? And I said, I want to do it all. I want to sell this thing. So, and then of course the big challenge is, if you just walk into one of the streamers and say, "Hey, we want to tell a story about a slave," they go, "Yeah, good luck with that," and off you go, because it's just in the algorithm. It's a period piece about Black people. It's all the things that nobody wants to see. So he said, "Well, how about if we make a graphic novel that is proof of concept?" And I said, "We need a bestseller that wins some awards." And they said, "Well, who's going to do that?" I said, "Well, low blood
I don't know.
pressure.
I know some
I'll,
people.
I'll take a crack at it." So that process was a ball. It did everything we wanted it to. It had a record-breaking Kickstarter campaign. It was #1 on Amazon. It has won a bunch of awards, and you know, the movie became more of a fait accompli. And
Right.
now I'm writing the screenplay for it. The screenplay is a little bit different than the books, but wonderful. And it's everything that all the skill sets that I've built from, you know, Princess and the Frog and Captain America and King of Kings, and then this.
When a story starts in a different medium, are they always transferable, or does that take some work? And as you just said, it's going to be a little different. So how do you take something from a graphic novel to a movie?
Yeah. Well, the hardest is actually going from weirdly from a book to a movie, because books
Mm,
are often internal monologues. They're
right.
they're not, you know, they're thoughts, and it's really tough to kind of put thoughts on screen. A play you can do, but plays are, you know, usually static in terms of like what locations and stuff they shoot them on. Dialogue is often wonderful, but that a graphic novel, the benefit of it is that it's a film on paper.
Right.
And you know, there are challenges with it, because you, as a writer, my first challenge was I like to write dialogue, and I like big meaty chunks of dialogue, um, but if you do that, you're going to block the entire frame. So you have to kind of write very short pieces of dialogue, um, and have those, uh, you know, and write them so that they'll fit in the corner, and then the beautiful artistry,
Mm,
you know, that these wonderful artists, all of them, like from Black Panther and Static Shock and DC and MCU and the Marvel comics, are doing. And you know, so that when, yeah, so that works. Then when you go to, you know, make that into a movie, you know, you've got different challenges, because movies can move. You can do things wordlessly that you maybe can't do inside of a graphic novel.
mm,
You do have more of a, you know, you can I can write more poetic dialogue in a screenplay than I can on a graphic novel. So the graphic novels will continue, but the movie is something
right.
something else entirely.
When you're dealing with real or culturally significant material, how do you balance the truth versus the storytelling?
It's tough. That's a really tough one, because I'm developing the screenplay with the director in this case,
Mm.
uh, and you know, we had kind of said entertainment over truth. It was was, and I was like, no, 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 truth. It's got to. I did so much research, you know, it's all got to be there. And so
Mm,
my challenge was to find entertaining truth. You
mm,
know, can I find moments in these, you know, in all this history that really are entertaining, and can I find a way to tell these moments in a way that's going to be, you know, cinematic and wonderful? So for me, I start with like, what are the images? You know, what time of day is it? What, you know, what's on the street? What is in the room? You know, around that, and then build that. What kind of music should be in this scene? And then the dialogue is kind of the cherry on top. You know, the dialogue clarifies anything that is going on. So you're watching a wonderful movie. You're kind of, you know, those are the movies I like. So you're watching a wonderful movie, and the dialogue is sparse, but it gives the actors a really great chance to do their stuff. You know, oh, and I'll say too that with something like King of Kings, there is none of that. You know, there's no making up anything.
right.
There are, uh, you know, the problem of course, the Gospels don't always agree, so sometimes that gives you a little bit of latitude. But what you're doing is you really want to kind of make the movie what people think as they read the Bible. You know, what are those images? What are those things they see? What are the scenes, the way that they would do them? And once again, I'm filtering it through my own self of like, what do I want to see? What do I see when I read these things? So there's zero latitude there. A lot with Princess and Frog, and a lot with
Right.
Captain America, but and a little bit, I'd say 10% with Defiant, and zero with King of Kings.
Yeah. How much weight do you give to the audience, to their involvement in the story, like
Mm.
how they'll see it?
Well, the audience is king. I mean, really, the you want the audience to have a great experience, and you want the audience to. For me, my barometer is, I don't want people to see the movie one time.
Mm.
I'm proudest when people come up to me and say, I saw Princess and the Frog 40 times in theaters. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah,
One thing was, his dad comes up to me and he just watched Treasure Planet
yeah.
with his son, and he has this little 5-year-old, 6-year-old son, and he says, "Yeah, we got to the movie theater a little bit late, looking for a seat, and my son says, oh, I have to go to the bathroom."
Mm.
And he says, okay, well, great, let's go. And he says, no, 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 I want to stay for this. And so he's watching the opening sequence, and the opening sequence kind of unfolds, and it goes immediately into another really fun sequence, and then that goes into a really fun sequence.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, my son wet himself that day. And I said, that's the biggest compliment I've ever gotten from anybody ever. Thank you for that. I'm gonna sleep on that for a million years. But that's kind of how I try to write.
Mm.
It, when people are late to dinner because they started reading my script late, or that kind of thing.
What?
A movie that is compelling, so compelling in character and theme and story, that it grips you and you want to see it again.
When an audience leaves, something that you wrote, what do you hope stays with them?
Mm. That theme. It's like, what's it about? I always start there, and I want people to. I don't want the lights to come up and for everybody to kind of walk out of the theater and never talk about it again. I do want people to say like, "Wow, okay, that was really cool. Hey, remember that scene? What do you blah 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 blah?" And then just start talking about it. Or that
Mm.
if they see the movie and they go for coffee or dinner afterwards, that the movie is the conversation.
Mm.
Because that's what I like, especially when I was a teenager. It was like, okay, great, we'll go to a movie and then dinner, and sometimes you're just looking for stuff, and you've had this shared experience. Why not talk about it?
Okay.
Um, that's mostly it. A lot of times it's that we're all, what was it Lenny Bruce said, we're all the same schmuck. uh you know I love that
Mm.
sometimes in the specificity of a story you find this kind of common humanity.
Right.
And and being a kind of a kid from the Midwest, I have an aw shucks kind of
Mhm.
look at things, and I really like that people have a wonderful feeling from the stuff that I write, and that
Mhm.
it's now a ride. And Prince and the Frog is a ride at Disneyland now. So,
Right, right.
so it was obviously like it resonated with people, and they wanted to kind of have that experience over and
Mm.
over. They have the Tiana ears now, and
Right.
just before I got on here, I was watching a Instagram. Somebody had just bought the ears. They went to Disneyland just to get the ears,
Oh,
and,
that's
and
sweet.
a couple of
Yeah.
other things. And I think like, oh man, that just
Yeah,
my heart goes out.
it must, exactly, exactly. That's very
Yeah,
touching.
it's
And
meaningful.
yes,
It touched people in a meaningful way. So yeah.
right. What's something about storytelling that took you years to understand?
Mm. All of it. Because I I'm terrible in that I will look back at like episodes of Fresh Prince and stuff that people love, and I will only see the mistakes, or not mistakes, but the things that I think I could have done better.
Right, right, right.
And I think that's part of what drives me, is that I want the next thing to be significantly better than the last thing. And so I'm always challenging myself to do that. And so yeah, so the I think like every day I learn more about characters. I do. I wish I could watch every movie that's ever been made every day, because they all inspire me. Really great movies tend to inspire me
Mhm.
a lot. I love reading screenplays. Every year I read all the nominees for best screenplay,
Yes.
um, and and that sometimes I will hate read those things, because I'll just go like, oh, that guy's so good. How could a writer be that good? And that kind of pushes me. I'll just be up at 4 a.m. going like, oh, the turn of phrase was so wonderful, and I wish I'd thought that way. Okay, tomorrow I'm gonna think more like that. I'm gonna be put myself in that category. And so that's it. And for me, it is
Mm,
literally everything. It's story structure, which is the
mm,
most important thing about screenplays. It's theme, it's character, it's antagonists, how antagonists can kind of drive as much of the movie as the protagonist.
mm,
um, and then just I say for myself, it's about like, I love movies. I just absolutely love movies. I love watching other people's movies. I love making movies. I love the late nights.
mm,
And I can't wait to sit in the front row. That's my thing. Is I'll
mhm.
sit in the front row, and I'll turn back and I'll just watch the audience, because I've seen what's on screen. I know that,
Right.
and I just watch the audience, and there are these wonderful moments when, like, you know, heads are on shoulders, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and tissues come out, and especially when Ray, whatever happens to Ray happens to Ray, but
Right.
in Frog, but those moments, that's what I live for. Is I wrote it anticipating that, you know, thinking as I'm
Mm,
typing, well, what's my mom going to think? What are
mm,
my kids going to think? And
mhm.
I'm thinking of those moments and thinking like, that should work. I hope it works. And then to see things like not only work, but just, they're kind of trading looks like, yo, this is
Yeah, yeah.
beautiful. That's what's great.
It's like a community event, right? They're all
Yes,
sharing
exactly. It's what
experience.
movies are made for, right?
Exactly.
Everybody goes into a room, the lights go out, there's no distractions, and you watch this thing, and either it moves you or you throw popcorn at the screen.
Exactly. You mentioned earlier that you had an agent. How did
Hmm.
all of that come about for you? Getting an
Oh
agent, did
wow.
it happen naturally? Was it a process?
Well, again, we go back to my dad saying, you know, if I have to send you a check, you're coming home. So I had this. I was my first job in Hollywood. I get out here, and well, actually, the first job that I thought I had went away. I was like, oh no, freak out.
Wait, what
I
was the
have.
first job you thought you
It
had?
was it was actually the job that I wound up getting. It was a job as a production assistant on the CBS Radford lot, which at the time
Okay.
was the Mary Tyler Moore, the MTM lot, where they shot St. Elsewhere and Hill Street Blues, and uh, I think the Newhart show, and all that stuff. They were primo, like the best writers in Hollywood worked in TV, worked on that lot, and so
Mhm.
that was the job that I wanted. Like, okay, great, and I'll get sandwiches and coffee for all those
Right.
guys, so that some of it will drip down on me, and I'll learn
Through
things just.
through osmosis or whatever, yeah.
Yes, just
Through
being in
breathing
the
in
in
their
the
air, yeah.
general area. Exactly. What do they have for breakfast? Ooh, I'll have one too. So that was the job I thought I was going to get. And then when I got out here, they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, kid." So it went to somebody else. I'm like, "Oh, that's great." So I started. I got the Hollywood Reporter and Variety. And in the back on Thursdays, they would have everything that was in production. And so I called everybody every day. I called, there were 60 things in production. I called 30 one day and then 30 the next day and 30 the next day. And everybody hung up on me. So I said, I said, okay, well, this is not going to work. So immediately I called the next day and I said, hey, do you want to hear a joke or a piece of gossip? And they were like, what? You want to hear a joke or a piece of gossip? And they said, well, a joke. And so I tell them the joke and I hang up. And and I went through all 60 of them like that. And then the next time I called, hey, you want to hear a joke or a piece of gossip? I was like, wait. Here, I'm going to put you on speakerphone. Yeah, this is that guy. Whatever, crazy guy. And then, I tell the joke or the piece of gossip and they say, okay, what's your deal, kid? What do you want? I said, well, you might have a production assistant there who doesn't tell jokes or gossip. And and if you fire that guy, then you have my number. Thank you. Click. And I wound up getting I got 5 calls, and about a week later, I got five calls. Yeah, you were right. We just fired our guy. Come on. I was like, okay, well, wait a minute. So I wound up, getting a job actually I wound up getting a job, just kind of delivering supplies and whatever, production assistant, Hollywood 101. And while I was on breaks, whenever that was, at the end of I carried a notebook and I would write screenplays or write teleplays. At the end of the night, I would type those up and I passed them around to a bunch of people. And these are the people on the demo. And 2 guys had gotten shows picked up in the same day. And they said, who are you going to hire? Well, I'm thinking about hiring the supply guy. He's really funny. And they said, well, no, I'm going to hire the supply guy. He's really funny. Because I would go to everybody's office. I figured if they fire me, so what? I'm not doing anything anyway. So I would just hang out with all of these guys who had these development deals, all these writers whose reputations I knew, and I knew all their stuff. And they so all of a sudden I get a call in the supply shed. Hey, Rob, who's your agent? I'm going to offer you a job. Oh, great. I don't have an agent. Well, you have my agent. He's going to call you. He's going to offer you, the thing. Just sign on the thing and you'll come work for me. Hang up, ring, the other guy. Hey, who's your agent? I don't have one. You do now. Here's the thing. All right. I was like, okay, great. I have 2 offers. Yay, me. And then I get a third call. Who are you and why are you in play? Everybody's talking about this kid who's a supply guy at MTM, and you have 2 offers out of nowhere. Nobody even knows who you are. Where were you 3 months ago? I was like, I was in Syracuse. And so, okay, well, you're going to sign with us. And that happened times. So I wound up interviewing with all these agents and picked the guy I liked the most. And I signed. Now that would never happen in a million years now, but that was my plan, was to just blanket the town. That if Hollywood is unique in that you can swing the bat as many times as you want. You can swing the bat an infinite number of times. You just have to connect one time. And most people will give up before they connect that one time. But if you give up, you're guaranteed your failure.
Right.
If you keep at it, and if you can just kind of be low blood pressure and just say, okay, that didn't happen. Because sometimes the rejections, as you know, as an actress, it's like sometimes the rejections come, they're brutal. You just have to say, I get it. We're not getting married. But and you just move on to the next one. You take your swing, and just keep going. And then maybe somebody says, hey, there's something there. Come talk to me.
Right.
And you're in.
You just have to keep going till you find someone who believes in you or likes you or whatever. Not everyone's gonna. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So Priscilla wants to know, I'm reading some comments here. Oh, with the Robert Smalls movie, who is going to be directing? Or do you know this yet?
I know, but I can't say. We will
say?
be announcing that soon, and we're hoping to. Uh, what we're hoping to do, the way Hollywood works now, is you have a writer, you have a director, you have a script, and then you need a performer. You need a piece of talent,
Yeah.
and that's the algorithm. So we have. I've been developing with a director who's phenomenal. When you hear the name, you're going to go, "Wow, how did they get that guy?" But he's phenomenal, and we've just had a ball, working on the script. From there, we're going to take it out and show it to a couple of actors. There's two main parts, and then once we lock down one or two of those, then we go out in the market. But and at that point, we'll announce everybody, but not yet.
Okay. Not
Be
yet.
patient.
Okay. And she also wants to know, Priscilla, if you will be writing a sequel to The Princess and the Frog.
Ooh, I wish. I wish. Everything else gets a sequel. Why not us? But
Exactly. I mean, it
I
was everyone loves it. So,
yeah, I would do it in a heartbeat. I'd love to work with Anika Noni Rose again. I'd love to work with Michael Leon Woolley. All those guys were just phenomenal, and yeah, it would be great. We had thought about it a lot when we were doing it. Unfortunately, without Ray, you'd have to kind of come up with Ray's cousin or something. Because Jim Cummings is amazing. But yeah, one can dream. If the writing campaign starts today, so we'll see.
well, this is Shout Out with Sage. So, I would like to know, was there anyone pivotal in you getting to where you are right now? Someone who motivated you or pushed you, or maybe not so nice that gave you more inspiration to go on. So, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to today?
Let's see. There's a handful of people actually from high school that I actually appreciated. One was Margaret Penborn, who was the librarian
Mm,
at my school. Went to Cranbrook in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and I loved science fiction, so I was just reading
mm,
through all the science fiction books in the library, and then eventually I said, "Oh, I finished them all," and I was pretty sad. And the next day she shows up, and she brought books from her home library,
oh,
and she said,
wow.
"Oh, take your time, whatever, have fun with these." And then we would talk about them and everything. And she said, she was the one that said, "Hey, have you thought about writing one of these?" And I said, "But writing a science fiction short story?" Yeah, yeah, try it out. So I wrote one, and then a couple weeks go by, and she says, "Hey, you should read this." And it was a letter from this guy, T. Corgahassen Boyle, T.C. Boyle, who is one of the just greatest science fiction writers ever. And he said, "Wow, this kid's got talent. What school is he going to?" Because he taught at the Iowa Writers Workshop, and he said, "You should consider coming here." And so he was the first person that was like, "Oh, maybe I can do this. That's fun." And then from there, the next one up was Dr. David Welch, who was he taught this class on script to screen,
Okay.
and he made us do film adaptations of scenes. And so I did the plays wherein I shall catch the king scene from Hamlet.
Mm.
I did as like, what if Hamlet had made a short film instead? uh,
Okay.
and and that one worked out very nicely. And he was really great. He said, I don't want to talk you out of doing something else, but this is really good, and you should really consider this. And so those two people were kind of very much the wind beneath my wings on my writing journey, because I'm just an awkward 12-year-old kid who really didn't see much of a future in any of this at all, and just having that thought of, wow, I wonder what a dream it would be to be able to write professionally. And now, looking back 40 years from then,
Yeah.
it's like it has been absolutely a dream. It's wonderful.
How do you decide what to say yes to?
Man, it comes down to would I watch it? Would I watch it, love it? Would it be my favorite film? Because these things take forever to make, and they're really, really hard. So that's my first. That is my first question. Sometime earlier on, it was, what will this do career-wise for me?
Right.
All the calculations. Working with this person would be really great.
Yeah.
Continuing on, and and those kind of things. But now it's kind of like, well, how much? Yeah, could it be my favorite film? And if so, I have to do it. If not, then I can't possibly do it. I would it will be somebody else's film, and they should go on and do it.
Are there any opportunities that you said no to that you later wish you had said yes to?
Many. Yeah, but sometimes it's the timing. It's everything. I don't like to kind of look back and regret.
Right.
I do tend to, if something didn't work, yeah, if something doesn't work, there's probably a reason for it, or it's, me not working on it. um Two big projects at the same time, that's rough. uh yeah, like I say, I tend not to look back and go, oh, what a huge mistake.
Yeah.
I'll just look at the thing that I'm doing now and say, okay, well, let this be that. Whatever I was going to achieve on that project, let me try to achieve it with this. Yeah.
What is the
But great
best
question.
piece? Oh, thank you. I try. What is the best piece of sage advice that someone has given you in regards to your career?
Ooh. Um, Probably the one about reading a lot of scripts, writing a lot of scripts, getting out to Hollywood, reading biographies. Uh, I would add to that watching movies. I would also say that stand your ground is a big part. That if I were to go back, I would probably advise myself to do more of that. I think when I was early in my career, I was very a people pleaser. So if they
Mm.
gave me, I would try desperately to make the note work. Sometimes the note that they give is not the note that should be taken. The note that they give is just a spotlight on something that's not working,
Mm.
and you have to find what solves both of our problems. And that was probably the bigger lesson. There's this Venn diagram of the movies that you would love for this to be, and of the movies that I would love for this to be. Maybe there's 20, and maybe there's 10, and maybe there's 3 or 4 in the middle that would work for both of us. It's finding that one. What is that movie that will that I can do my best work on, and that you will appreciate? And then once I have that, then I think, okay, great, then we're fine. A lot of times I'm trying to shove people out into my
Yeah,
little
yeah.
area Venn diagram, and saying like, no, your movie sucks and mine is great. And that's never good. Or I'm over on their thing, like trying to make their movie or trying to make their TV show, and it's just not hitting with me.
Right. Because it doesn't resonate with you and you can't
Right.
can't you
It
can't
has to
write
be.
something you don't really believe in, right?
Yeah, we both have to sing melody harmony and work on it together. And it should be, we should be arm in arm at the premiere going like, oh, what a wonderful gift we have for everybody.
Right. What do you believe are the necessary steps to be successful?
Ooh. Um, Plan. I often say that my plan D becomes my plan A pretty quickly. So go out like it's a war. Plan this. If this happens and this happens, then I'll do this and this, whatever. Because sometimes in the moment you won't have time, and sometimes you really do have to think everything through to the nth degree. So go in with a battle plan. Go and make sure you have the weapons to do battle, and then don't give up. Just see it through. Just keep pounding away, and eventually, hopefully, good things happen, or you wind up on plan E, and and you haven't got anything there, and so you just wind up going, or the team or the other side doesn't want to fight the same way as you do, and you just kind of have to walk away.
How important is networking and building relationships to a career?
Ooh. Uh, I would say the most important. That so many projects happen because like Cap happened because I built up some goodwill with Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok, that that so much of TV. I got my first show. I'm going to tell like a story. I got my first show, and I'm working on this show, Better Days. Nothing, whatever. 3 episodes on the air, 6 episodes, nothing. And it gets quickly canceled, and that was my first show. So I thought, oh no, my career is over. This is terrible. And this guy Marty Nadler, who's one of the funniest comedy writers in Hollywood, he says, Rob, get a Rolodex, write down everybody that you've worked with, and call them all the time. And I said, oh, man, I don't know. I don't want to bother anybody. He said, don't bother anybody. Just call. So I called, and I was like, hey, how you doing? I was like, oh, are you available? Yeah, come on over. I got a show. And I was working like that week. I think that show was, if I'm not sure, I think it was Full House. It was either Full House or Gung Ho or something like that. But it was like I was working right away. And then when that show ended, I called everybody from the 2 shows. And then I got another job, and then and on and on, and it has always been that. Most of the people that I work with are people that I have previously worked with, including Ron Clements and John Musker, who I worked with, Princess and the Frog with. They were the same guys who did Treasure Planet. Rarely am I working with strangers now, and
Right.
and I think it's. You have a great experience with somebody. You're in the, you go through it, you survive it, and everybody wants to, do it again. Bring the band back together, and
Exactly.
that's where the rubber meets the road. If those experiences were terrible, I would never work again, and I probably deserve to never work again.
Right. If someone was looking to move to LA, what would your biggest tip be for them?
I was going to say don't. I would say find save up enough money so that you can live for a little while first. That you don't really compromise tremendously and wind up somewhere else. This town wants you to answer phones for a jerk. That is basically what. If you don't have a plan for yourself, you're going to be answering phones for a jerk.
Yeah, it's gonna make a plan for you. That's for sure. Yes, definitely. I
Yes,
would
yeah, the
agree.
town is gonna. What is it? Chris Rock says, and he and I worked together for a little bit. That Hollywood is undefeated. That Hollywood will take you and do what it wants to do with you, and then jettison you as quickly as possible. And that job, answering phones for the jerk, somebody's gonna quit that job, and it's going to be available, and that's going to be your job, and then you're going to hate the town. You're going to go back and work at Starbucks. So find. For me, it was I want to answer phones for somebody I admire. That was my primary. I want to answer phones for somebody I admire, so that I will learn from them. I will show them my material. If they like it, great. If they don't, I'm going to keep working on it. And that's what I did. I just cycled through. I was just always pestering people with my material. I was getting terrible notes in the beginning, like, "Oh, I hate this," and then eventually people were saying like, "Okay, it's getting better. You're going to keep showing me stuff. I'll keep reading it." And I was just like a fly in the ointment for a lot of people, and so that was the key, was like, get that. If you don't have a plan for, like, I would like to work with these 7 people in the lowest capacity they have, I understand the structure of these 7 companies, and I'm going to call them relentlessly and see if I can get work there. Or I know the people that they know, so maybe I can't get a job at those seven, but I this guy works with this person a lot, and if I work there, then maybe I can work my way over.
Right.
Have those as plans, or else, yeah, you're just Hollywood has a plan for you, and it's not fun. So don't do that.
Have a plan for yourself.
Yes.
What are you working on? What's next?
Next is, well, there's Defiant. Defiant is moving forward. We're having a fun time with that. I'm also doing a movie about fencing. It takes place in the world of fencing.
Oh
It's always
wow.
been fascinating to me, and I like movies about black people in white spaces. So it's a lot of fun, and almost instantly, I'm finding there's this community that wants to see a movie like that made, and so it's once again a lot of hard, like, do I really want to make this movie? Whatever. Oh, it could be really really great. It could be Karate Kid, and
Yeah.
so that is cruising away. There's another movie that I wrote a little while ago that's kind of um, basically a modern day western,
Hmm.
and that one's a lot of fun. That one seems to be getting uh, yeah, some traction. So look around, and if you find me on I am Rob Edwards at on Instagram,
Instagram.
I'll try to chronicle what I'm up to, what's coming up next, because it should be a fun ride. I mean, it's a good. Um, I hate to say it's terrible, but it's a good time to be me right now. so I'm getting to do more of what I want to do,
Hmm.
and those projects are all like a lot of fun. They're going to be super fun to watch.
Awesome. And I want to thank our sponsor today before we close up, Raven and Grace Press. Their new book, Heal to Lead Wellness, Volume 2, is out on Amazon, and it is currently a bestseller in the business leadership and personal transformation categories. And yours truly, I am a contributor and I have a chapter within. So it's a selfless plug, I guess. So
Nice.
thanks to Raven and Grace Press. And Rob, thank you so much for being here today. You gave us so much great information. I was so excited. I'm glad we finally were able to organize it all. We had, you know,
Absolutely. Yes, this
some
is great.
some so so to everyone that watched, thanks. And I want to thank Rob again for sharing how to be a storyteller, and his work reminds us that the stories we connect to most are the ones built with intention, craft, and heart. So thanks everyone. See you next time.
All right.
And bye.
What a pleasure.
Thanks.
This has been great.
Thanks.